Welcome to Reddit Echoes, where entitled people slap themselves in the face with nothing but their own loud mouths and limitless arrogance. In today's video, you'll hear stories so real, so ridiculous, they'll make you question, how are these people not embarrassed at all? From an ex-girlfriend suing for $100,000 after getting caught cheating to a neighbor, bulldozing someone else's yard and saying grass looks better than flowers anyway. Think you've met unreasonable people before. Just wait until you meet the stars of today's video. Story 1. She cheated, then sued me for $100,000 just because I broke up with her. I used to think I had a pretty solid grasp on the boundaries of kindness and trust. That is, until I dated a woman for 11 years. And ended up getting sued for $100,000 just because I broke up with her. I know sounds like something straight out of a comic book. But unfortunately, this is real life. I'm not rich, but I treated my girlfriend like a mini queen. I paid for most of our living expenses, rent, internet utilities, even her monthly nail appointments. We went on regular date nights, took a few vacations each year. It was a comfortable and stable life, at least on the surface. Except I was the only one truly investing in the relationship. And then I found out she was cheating with an unemployed guy. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't even deny it. Just looked me in the eye and said, "I need to explore myself." Explore what exactly? Using my money to fuel her little self-discovery love trip, I ended things immediately. But in her mind, I didn't have that right. She claimed that since I had family nearby and she didn't, I should move out and let her stay in my apartment with her new boyfriend. Oh, and she also suggested that I keep paying the bills for a few more months so they could get back on their feet. I thought it was a joke, but she was dead serious, and it only got worse from there. I have 2 dogs I love like my own children. She told me we've bonded with them. You can visit, but you'll need my boyfriend's permission first. Oh, and of course I'd still be responsible for their food and vet expenses. So yeah, I kicked both of them out and kept the dogs. Thought that was the end. Oh, sweet summer child, I did too. A few weeks later, she came back with a lawsuit. The reason, she said, she lost her job because she had to move after our breakup, and therefore I was responsible for destroying her career. She demanded compensation for emotional distress and lost income. Thankfully, the judge rejected it outright because it sounded like something ripped from a trashy soap opera. I thought it was over, but nope. She started emailing my company threatening to sue them for giving me employment that enabled me to ruin her life. She demanded a $100,000 out-of-court settlement. Fun fact, she has never made that kind of money in her entire life. My company's response: they filed a counter-lawsuit for harassment, and I was praised internally for staying calm throughout the ordeal. Still not over. She then started messaging every member of my family telling them I abandoned a weak woman just because she dared to love someone else and that they should at least help her with rent. Nobody gave her a cent, so she turned to social media. She started live streaming, sobbing into the camera, claiming to be a domestic abuse survivor, begging strangers to send her money via Cash App. And the cherry on top, a friend of mine took a screenshot of her story. It was a photo of her and her new man hugging, captioned, "So happy to finally be with a real man." Oh, and just when I thought the drama curtain had finally fallen, she suddenly announced she was pregnant with my child. I laughed. We'd never had a pregnancy scare in 11 years. And wasn't she busy starting a new journey with her unemployed soulmate? I didn't believe her for a second. But the whole ordeal taught me one priceless lesson. Just because someone depends on you doesn't mean they love you. Some people just treat you like a human ATM, both emotionally and financially. I owe her nothing. No money, no apology, not even a shred of attention. And I sure as hell don't owe her $100,000 to rebuild her life with a guy who can't afford a coffee. Story 2. I refused to care for a 330-pound elderly woman 7 days a week and got called ungrateful. I don't know about you, but if someone I haven't spoken to in 5 years suddenly calls me out of the blue, I'd assume it's an emergency. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. It was an offer to become a live-in maid and caregiver for a 330-pound elderly woman, no salary, no AC, no days off. The caller was Marcus, an old acquaintance from college. The kind of guy who always made you feel like taking a shower after every conversation. Arrogant, braggy, and always looking at people as potential labor resources. We started the call with some fake small talk. I mentioned that I was between jobs, still looking for the right full-time position. Marcus immediately launched into his usual wealth-flaunting routine, a beach house on the West Coast, a winter house in New England, and even the struggle of having to split summer between 2 villas because the heat gets unbearable. I joked, "Yeah, sounds like a real problem," and politely laughed. I thought that would be the end of it. Nope. That was just the opening act for the most absurd humanitarian offer I've ever received. Marcus went, "We need someone to help out Aunt Clarice for the summer. She's a bit overweight, but it's just basic help meals, bathing, bathroom stuff. Nothing hard." And then he dropped the bomb. "It's super light work. Just 7 days a week, no breaks for 3 months. But hey, you get your own room, $200 per week, and plenty of human connection experiences." I was stunned. $200 a week. That's less than $30 a day to care for a nearly immobile woman in a house with no air conditioning during the height of summer. And what the hell are human connection experiences? Learning how to wash someone's hair while they're sweating buckets in 100-degree heat. I laughed somewhat politely. At least I think I did, and said, "Marcus, I appreciate the thought, but I'll have to pass. I have my own place now, and I really can't take on a job like that." Did he take the hint? Of course not. Marcus got a little passive-aggressive, telling me I was one of the kindest people he knew, that I used to be a flight attendant, knew basic first aid customer service care, and I'd be perfect for the role. I doubled down. "Marcus, would you do this job for that pay?" Because I wouldn't. Still not letting it go, he said, "I'll check in again in a week to see if you change your mind." I blocked his number the second the call ended. But guess what? It didn't stop there. The next morning, Marcus posted this passive-aggressive Facebook status, "Tough to ask a close friend for help caring for family. But life teaches you sometimes kindness is rejected because of money. Sad." And he included a photo of me from college handing out charity sandwiches. Naturally, friends started tagging me in the comments asking what was going on, so I clapped back with a status of my own. Kindness isn't stupidity. And I don't owe anyone a summer of unpaid labor, especially not at the price of a KFC combo meal. The post blew up. Marcus vanished from Facebook for a few days after that. And in case you're wondering what happened to Aunt Clarice, I don't know. I hope she found someone who's paid fairly and treated with the dignity she deserves. As for me, I walked away with a life lesson. When someone says easy job, great pay, be skeptical. But when they say tough job, no pay but you'll grow as a human being, just block them immediately. Story 3. I helped my best friend design a house, then walked away. Because his mother-in-law treated me like a servant, I'm an engineer. Not the tank-top-wearing, mud-covered construction site kind, more the site behind a desk, stress over CAD files, and looming deadlines kind. Still, once in a while, out of goodwill, I do private consulting for friends who are renovating or building homes. Important note, only for close friends. Only when I let my guard down. And that's exactly how I fell into a pit called my friend's mother-in-law. It started with a call from my best friend Dan. "Hey, my mother-in-law's redoing her old house. She needs an engineer to review the design plans. Can you help?" I hesitated. The words mother-in-law already triggered my internal red flag system. But this was Dan, the guy who once drove me to the ER after a bad bike accident. So I said yes. Mistake number 1. From her very first email, this woman radiated strong small-town diva who once appeared on a game show Vibes. Here's a line from her email. "I'm looking for someone flexible, understanding, not demanding, and willing to take direction from the homeowner." Translation: I want a licensed slave. I stayed professional. After all, I was charging her a symbolic fee about 1/10 of what any real firm would have billed. At first, things were tolerable. She was a little snobby, but I'm used to never wrong clients. Then things started to veer off course when I offered to visit the property over the weekend. She refused. I suggested a weekday evening. Still no. The only time she'd approve was during business hours when I'm at my actual job earning my actual living. I gently explained that I could only come during weekends or after work, and that's when she exploded. She sent me a full-page email half in caps lock with bold text sprinkled like glitter. "I'm paying you. You're not an artist who comes and goes as he pleases. Service providers are supposed to serve." I took a screenshot, forwarded it to Dan with a single message: "I'm out. Good luck." Dan apologized profusely, insisting she doesn't represent the whole family, blah blah. But I've dealt with enough families to know when one person is that bad, the whole household pays for it. I stayed silent. Not angry, not regretful. Just done. 3 weeks later, I got an email from her husband. "We'd really appreciate it if you could return. I promise my wife won't show up or contact you ever again." "Oh, really?" Finally feeling the burn, I didn't respond right away. Instead, I asked Dan what was going on. He told me. All the other design firms quoted ridiculously high prices. Wait times were up to 2 months. They wanted to move in ASAP. And a few firms outright refused to take the project because of rumors like that house is a nightmare and the owner is worse. I smiled and said karma is the cleanest blueprint in the industry. And as you've probably guessed, I said no. Not because I was being petty, but because I didn't believe for a second that woman would stay out of it. I'm not that naive. Dan wasn't upset. In fact, he admitted he was kind of glad his mother-in-law finally got a taste of her own medicine. She thought everyone would bend to her will. Now, the only voice she hears is the echo of her own commands. Here's what I learned from this. Some people think that once they pay for a service, they're entitled to disrespect commands and shouting matches. They think they're buying a task. No, what they're really buying is a delusion of power, and they think labor equals submission. But not me. I have self-respect, a career, and an inbox ready to send rejection emails. And to people like her, I have just one line to say: your project, it's officially out of scope. Story 4. My mom called my boss. Just because I worked 1 hour of overtime, I have a mother who loves me very much. The kind of love that's suffocating, controlling, and tight enough to make me question whether I'm actually 30 years old or just an 8-year-old kid trapped in a grown man's body. My name is Sam. I'm the kind of office worker people describe as so polite it's almost alarming. I apologize if I sneeze too loud. I say thank you when someone hands me a printed document, and I constantly look around like there's a hidden camera recording me at all times. Truth is, I was raised that way. My mom wasn't the "I'm proud of my independent adult son" type. She was the "who's texting you? Why are you eating that? Where are you sitting? Why aren't you home yet?" type. When I started a new job, I quietly hoped it would be my chance to, grow up a little, create some space, be my own person. Nope. Wrong again. From day one, I was answering phone calls every 30 minutes. She wanted to know what I was doing, where I was sitting, who I was talking to, and whether I'd drunk enough water. At first, my co-workers thought I was just a sweet mama's boy. After a week, everyone realized something was off. One day, the department head, the OP in this story, asked me, "Sam, are you okay? You always look like you're one step away from being fired." I gave a nervous smile and admitted, "My mom calls a lot. I'm still adjusting to not having to report everything to someone." He didn't say much. I figured that was the end of it. Until one day we had to stay late for end-of-month reports. Now everyone knows the end of the month is crunch time. People stayed a bit late, no one complained. But for me, every minute past 5:00 p.m. was like triggering a high-alert alarm from Mission Control. Around 6:30 p.m., my phone rang. I stepped out into the hallway to answer it. A few minutes later, I returned pale as a ghost. I approached OP shaking slightly and said, "My mom wants to speak to you." He thought I was joking. God, I wish I was joking. But no, I actually handed my boss my phone so my mom could scold him. I didn't hear the whole call, but the look on OP's face was like he'd just been told the earth was flat on live television. My mom shouted that I was being overworked, that the roads are dangerous at night, and asked who gave you the right to treat my son like a slave. OP said just one thing, calm, measured, "I think Sam can explain things better." Then he handed the phone back. And that's when it hit me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just said in the firmest voice I've ever used, "Mom, I need this job. I stayed late because it's my responsibility, and everyone else did too. You can't keep doing this. Please, stop." Silence. Then I hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't ask for permission to make a decision. We finished work about an hour later. As we walked to the parking lot, OP offered to grab a drink to de-stress, he said. I accepted. On the drive, I smiled not wide, but the kind of smile that feels lighter than graduating college. As I got out near my house, I turned and said, "Thanks. Tonight's going to be hard, but it needs to happen." From that day on, my mom still called, but not every 30 minutes. She stopped yelling about my schedule. She never called my boss again. I can't say everything's perfect now, but I know one thing for sure. That day, I shattered the invisible cage I'd been living in my whole life. And here's what I've realized more than anything school ever taught me. Some cages don't need metal bars. They just need the people inside to believe they can't live without them. I'm learning how to live free, one step at a time. And you know what? I've never felt stronger. Story 5. My neighbor destroyed my land, my plants, and turned my yard into their personal parking lot. I used to think buying a house in the suburbs was a smart decision, peaceful, spacious, with a nice little yard where I could grow lavender for my wife. That was before I met the neighbors. And suddenly I understood why some people choose to live deep in the woods with no one within 2 kilometers. My wife and I had just bought a modest home which came with an empty lot between our house and the neighbors. It was a deliberate choice. We didn't want anyone building too close to us. We also wanted the freedom to garden, plant trees, maybe even put up a little shed when we had kids. The moment we moved in, I hired a survey team to mark the official property line and placed boundary stakes all around the land. Things were peaceful at first. Then one beautiful morning, I walked outside and noticed every single stake was gone. I didn't want to point fingers, but there was only one other house next to ours. And I can confidently say I've never had a hobby of digging up boundary markers for fun. Still, I kept it cool. I had photos of the markers, and I told myself, maybe they thought it was trash. Yeah, I was being very naive. A few weeks later, things officially crossed into insanity territory. I left for work early one morning and heard the rumble of a machine in the back. I went outside and my jaw hit the floor. My neighbor was driving a bobcat clearing out my lot. He had ripped up bushes, destroyed small trees, and even tore out the lavender my wife loved. I yelled, "What the hell are you doing? That's my land." He shrugged. Didn't think anyone was using it. Besides, it looked kind of messy. Messy. He had just destroyed hundreds of dollars worth of plants and flowers, not to mention my wife's beloved lilac bush. I told him to stop. He did, but the damage was already done. My wife and I decided not to escalate it. Yet. We talked it over and decided to replant native wildflowers good for the environment, beautiful and symbolic of reclaiming what was ours. We spent over $200 on seeds, spread them carefully, and put up a small temporary fence. 3 days later, I ran to the gas station for 15 minutes. When I got back, I froze. My neighbor and his wife were spreading hay and grass seed all over the plot I'd just seeded with wildflowers. I lost it. I stormed out. "What the hell are you two doing?" Their response: deadpan calm. "We didn't think the flowers looked good. Grass will be better. You should be thanking us." Thanking them for trampling my property, violating legal boundaries, and replacing my wife's dream with their cheap suburban lawn aesthetic, it didn't stop there. They started letting their giant dog poop on my lot. They even talked about creating a loop driveway cutting through my land to make a back entry for trucks. I completely snapped. My wife and I had no choice but to spend $12,500 on a steel fence to enclose the entire lot. And I built it myself every weekend in 95-degree fire heat. I was exhausted, furious. If someone had said the phrase "friendly neighbors" to me at that point, I would have laughed like the Joker. I posted about it on Reddit just to vent. But then the replies came flooding in with one phrase I'd never heard before: tree law. Apparently, in many states, destroying someone's plants, trees, or landscaping can lead to tens of thousands in damages depending on the species and extent of destruction. One person sent me a link to a court case where someone won over $100,000 after a neighbor accidentally cut down a bonsai tree. Now I'm seriously considering getting a lawyer involved. I'm not the suing type, but this might be the first time karma in legal form could bring both justice and a refund for my fence. I don't know how it'll play out yet, but one thing is certain: I bought this land. I nurtured this land, I protected this land, and if you dare mess with my land, then prepare to pay. Steel post by steel post. Story 6. She tried to return her breakfast using last month's Home Depot receipt. This is the story of a woman with an extraordinary gift: the power to walk into any establishment, wave around an old crumpled receipt, and spark a full-scale meltdown like she's a VIP at the freaking White House. This happened last week in a place that's usually peaceful, the Dunkin' Donuts near my house. I stopped by, as usual, to grab a donut and iced coffee. I got in line, ordered, picked up my food, and was about to sit down when the door slammed open like we were mid-bank robbery. In stormed a middle-aged woman, bleached yellow-blonde hair, flailing what looked like a very wrinkled piece of paper. She had no food bag, no coffee, nothing, just that one murdered-looking receipt. The first thing she screamed was, "I want to see the manager. You messed up my order again. I'm calling corporate." I was sitting near the counter, and since she was basically shouting through a megaphone, I had front-row seats to the drama. The cashier, a young girl who looked like life hadn't beaten her spirit down, yet politely summoned a manager. He came out an older guy, clearly a veteran of a few hundred Karen-style confrontations. He smiled professionally. "Hi, ma'am. Could I take a look at your receipt and find out what went wrong with your order?" She held up the receipt like it was a war flag and yelled, "I have the receipt, and you people never get it right." I leaned over just enough to glimpse what she was waving, and I had to physically swallow a laugh. It was a Home Depot receipt. Yep, Home Depot, not Dunkin', not today, and definitely not food. I tried, I really did. The manager, bless his soul, kept his cool. "Ma'am, would you mind letting me take a closer look at the receipt?" She glared like he'd asked her for a kidney. "I am showing it to you. I'm calling corporate. You're all useless. I couldn't take it anymore." With the calmest voice I could muster, I said, "Excuse me, ma'am. Are you sure you're in the right store?" She turned on me like a horror movie villain, her glare suggesting I'd just insulted her entire bloodline. "Of course I am. Shut up." Still calm, I pointed gently. "You're in Dunkin'. But that receipt, it's from Home Depot, and it's dated over a month ago." Silence. Like funeral home silence. She froze for a second, then, in true entitled, power-tripping fashion, crumpled the receipt, tossed it at the manager's face, and stormed out like a defeated queen leaving the battlefield. But it wasn't over. When I finished my breakfast and walked to my car, she sped past me in a silver SUV, rolled down the window, flipped me the bird, and disappeared in a puff of exhaust like a C-list Marvel villain. I just smiled to myself and thought, well, I guess someone decided I'm number one today. That evening, I told the story to my friends. One of them dropped a line I'll never forget. She's not wrong, the food at Home Depot is terrible. If you've ever worked retail or service, you know that weird blend of frustration and comedy. And if you're a customer, please, for the love of coffee and sanity, at least make sure your receipt is from the right store. And from, this century. And that's today's collection of entitled masterpieces, from exes moonlighting as drama court lawyers to neighbors and moms so unhinged you'll want to relocate to another planet. If you've ever dealt with someone this irrational or worse, drop your story in the comments. We've got a whole community ready to laugh, rage, and nod in solidarity with you. Want a part 2? Smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss a delicious dose of instant karma. This is Reddit Echoes, where real stories echo from Reddit, and sometimes stay echoing in your head long after the video ends.